So why don't you guys tell us, or I guess Dan, since you brought it up before the podcast, why don't you tell us a little more about what's going on in the world of Silent Hill?
Oh, yes.
Now, is this different news than what you guys talked about last week?
Yes.
Because you guys, I was
really.
Last week was, I should have labeled last week like the horror. That should have been the Halloween episode. It was like Resident Evil straight into Silent Hill. And that's kind of what we're doing today, too. You talked about Resident Evil. Now we're going back to Silent Hill. So it's kind of funny.
So Konami finally addressed the rumor a little bit.
Konami.
I mean, Konami, unfortunately, is not the most reliable group right now, considering they're like, oh, yeah, we're making a game. It's a pachinko machine.
Yeah, but to be fair, it's not like they've been trying to pretend that wasn't a fact, though. Like, they've been like, yeah, that's what we're doing right now. It's not like they've been, like, pretending to be, like, a, major player in video games right now. Up until, I guess, hearing this news, and I guess they sort of have alluded keeping the Metal Gear series alive, but... Yeah,
I mean, it seems like they want to get back into the gaming world again, which is good. I don't want them to
they have such good IPs.
Yeah, I mean, two of my favorites are in their IP. Even Castlevania too. I played it a lot as a kid. Just either sell them or fix them.
I forgot Castlevania was a Konami property.
Originally. Yeah, I don't know what it is now because I know it came out the what is it called? Lords of Shadow.
Was that not Konami?
I don't know if it was.
I don't know.
I don't remember, but
I'm not a big Castlevania guy.
Something about the hack and slash like vampire thing. I was like, oh, that was a really good game. Unfortunately, the ending or the big surprise in that game was spoiled for me, so I was like, oh, fuck.
It was created and developed by Konami.
Oh, it is? Okay, good. So they have the capability. So
Kojima Productions was involved at one point.
Yes, I remember he touched on it. I just didn't know what he actually did for the game. But so Konami recently said, like, hey, we're listening to fans, and we have two. And I guess they didn't say it, but there's also multiple sources that are saying that there's multiple Silent Hill games being in development right now.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It seems like one of them is supposed to be kind of like a remake, and then the other one's supposed to be kind of like a Telltale style, like, maybe episodic, or like maybe just like a very different gameplay style than we're used to with Silent Hill. And I just like love the idea of having multiple Silent Hills being made at the same time with like a very different creative look at how a Silent Hill game could be.
I just hope it's not like Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed Rogue. Remember they did that at the same time? They're like, oh, they're going to launch within a week of each other, and one's going to be for the PlayStation 3.
This sounds a little bit different than that. That was...
Well, again,
I feel like that was Ubisoft really overselling the mark, kind of like the EA coming out with those two games at once, Titanfall 2 and Battlefield. Like, they were oversaturating the market with their own IP and also stretching their workforce, where like Konami's people must have like nothing to do right now.
Yeah, and I kind of like that they're somewhat acknowledging that they've kind of lost their way in the Silent Hill series. Like, the first one was really good, the second one was like a masterpiece, the third one was pretty good, and then like after that they just kind of slowly went downhill to the point where like it's hard to defend any of those later ones, like, or the PSP one.
It's not even just that, like their properties in general, like the last game that came out that even garnered any critical acclaim was probably Metal Gear Solid 5, and not everybody even really liked that.
Yeah, true. I didn't really like that one, but
they did.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that we're actually going to get these games that I thought were kind of never going to be back in my life. They could actually be back in my life. So
I do have a question for you too regarding this, but first I do want to point out, just because you brought it up, Castlevania Lords of Shadow was developed by Konami as well, and it looks like that's the last one they made.
Lords of Shadow 2 as well, but I don't know if that's Konami. That game was not nearly as highly regarded as the first one. I know that.
Sequels, Lords of Shadow Mirror of Fate.
That was like a DLC.
Okay.
Or something along that line.
Lords of Shadow 2.
Yep.
Yep, published by Konami, developed by Mercury Stream.
Okay.
But still published by Konami. Like, they own the IP. Yep. Basically, that's what comes down to.
The second one wasn't received nearly as well. Or Mirrors of Fate, I believe, was an HD touch-up of like an older Castlevania. I don't think it was a completely new like IP.
Was it a touch-up of Symphony of the Night?
No, it wasn't that. It was something else.
Oh. So going back to Silent Hill.
Yeah, let's stop going off Castlevania side tangents that
we were talking about
not understanding anything that's happening.
when we were
You should
talking
play.
about.
Do you like hack and slash?
Wait a minute. We're not allowed to talk about something that you don't have any frame.
I just feel like you keep
on?
trying to say something and then we go off on like a 2-minute Castlevania tangent for some reason.
I'll remember that next time he's talking about World of Warcraft.
He hasn't brought that up in such a long time.
I know he hasn't, but
I feel like we barely talked about Castlevania. But anyways, which Silent Hill do you guys think that they're going to remake, though? Do you think they're going to start with 1 or they're going to start with 2? And like really...
Well, they didn't really say remakes. They just said like a soft reboot, right?
Oh,
that was kind of the rumor.
so they
sorry.
can do anything.
I thought you meant I thought you said remake, like they were going to take one of their older ones.
So I'm sure it'll be just kind of like Silent Hill Town. For some reason, someone will be dragged there by like a letter or like maybe a phone call or something newer. Or like, who knows? But
unless they're going to try to pull a Resident Evil 7 where they like change up the formula of the game very drastically.
I hope not. I mean,
maybe we'll have to see.
I don't want it to be like all action, but I also don't want it to be like a walking simulator type of thing. That's why with PT, I don't understand why it got everyone like super psyched. I didn't really do anything.
I thought you were psyched for that game.
I was psyched for the idea of an open Silent Hill game that you can walk around and do stuff. But I need a weapon. I need something. You were just literally walking around a hallway the whole time.
Well, we also don't know what that game was going to become.
No,
that was just the beginning of it. I was floored by like graphically just how nice it was for that little part. And then there was wasn't there that indie developer that was trying to make kind of a spiritual successor to PT, but it ended up folding.
Well, I mean, Konami's very protective of their crap, so it got like shut down. But
it got shut down.
Yeah, same thing with like Metal Gear.
That.
Someone was working on like a Metal Gear Solid 1 like HD like touch up, and they got pretty far. And then Konami was like, nope, shut it down. So it's like, ugh.
Yeah, Silent Hill's a little different than Resident Evil though. Like Resident Evil, I feel like the reason that 7 was so shocking was just because like we spent so many games.
A Resident Evil game?
Well, yeah, we spent so many games revolving around the same characters, and even though 6 was kind of gross, we still had like the charm of the game in there. And Silent Hill, does it really carry?
I don't know if 6 had the charm at all.
Well, all right, it had the characters in it.
Oh, okay.
Like 5 had Wesker being hit.
5 had the
in a
charm.
Volcano and the Rock and all that crap. But Silent Hill, does each Silent Hill game really bleed into the others like that? Aren't they all kind of like different stories? They're like kind of more segregated. So maybe it lends itself better to a remake like that than Resident Evil did. Well,
also the idea of the town of Silent Hill is interesting because it also makes sense because Silent Hill is supposed to bend and change depending on who's there. So
wait, is the same town in each game?
Yes, and it's supposed to get it is supposed to get more kind of powerful throughout the series in a way. Like it's like the way I've read about it is it gets bigger and it stretches out more to where like in Silent Hill 4 the room it's actually going like it's reaching outside of Silent Hill to some extent. So there's kind of like some weird undersurface of like not a overarching story, but just like it's not just 1 and 1 and 1.
So do the games all take place like canonically in the same town? Like they're all like of the same continuity?
They don't mention anything. I don't think any of them really mention the previous game.
Yeah, not that I can remember.
So, but I think that it's just a different interpretation on a different part of the town.
Well, then it lends itself better to a RE7 type remake then, because it's not like you were really like directly connected to anything that came out previously. Whereas Resident Evil 7 was calling itself Resident Evil 7, and it had like literally nothing to do with the other 6 whatsoever.
Yeah, it was originally called Kitchen. That's what the demo was for Resident Evil 7. It was called Kitchen. There was a game where your hands were tied behind your back, and then they were like, "Oh crap, VR isn't selling well. Let's strap a Resident Evil thing in front of it, and then by the way, here's a picture of the umbrella like helicopter.
Wait, so
there's your reference.
So it did start out as a different game.
Yeah, it was Kitchen. It was a demo.
It
was a demo for the VR, and then people were frightened by it.
Oh, I always just assumed that. I didn't know it was true.
The creepy girl lady that that's like your ex-wife or something, or your wife, was the monster in that game. Like her evil self. Yeah. And then they were like, oh, let's just make it a VR first person. Again, it was good. It just didn't it doesn't feel like a Resident Evil game. It just felt like a horror game, it was a great horror game, but it just wasn't Resident Evil. It had no connection at all. And I understand if they want to branch off to a different segment or whatever, but connect it more to
You both liked it though.
I
right?
liked it, but it same thing with Metal Gear Solid 5. It was a great game in itself, but
Yeah, it was a bad Resident Evil game.
as like a series like connector, like
It's a great game. It's not a good Resident Evil game.
it's not a good Resident Evil game. It wasn't even a Resident Evil game. Like I said, you find a picture of a helicopter with the umbrella symbol on it. That's one reference I got, and I think there's another like letter that you find that says something about like
Some of the keys,
Raccoon City.
some of the
or
doors
something.
have like different weird keys that you have to find, but that's like it.
That's it. So it just felt like a horror game. Instead of a mansion, it was more of like a small house with like secret corridors.
Yeah, it basically had as much to do with Silent Hill as it did Resident Evil. Just kind of that like
Yeah.
more genre piece as opposed to any sort of.
Honestly, if they slapped on Silent Hill, I would have been like, oh, okay. Like, this makes the same amount of sense. A lot of it's, like, psychological kind of horror. Where the father, like, doesn't die, even getting from, like, chopped in the head and hit by a car. It's like, nope, he's still living. Lit on fire, whatever the hell it is. But it was still fun. And I guess there's also news or rumors flying around that Resident Evil 8 is going to be in first person as well. So I'm starting to think that
I wonder if it'll be in VR too.
I mean, if it is, that's awesome. I just kind of wish they would not name it Resident Evil 7, like the main part of the franchise. I wish
Like a
they
side
did
shoot series or something.
I wish they did it like Resident Evil Revelations, where you knew it was taking place in the Resident Evil universe, but you knew it was a separate style of game.
But this one didn't even really seem like it was taking place in the same universe. Like, it seemed like just something completely like
It just felt-
if you didn't say it was a Resident Evil game, I wouldn't have thought it. But at the same time, maybe their plan is, hey, we're going to continue with this new engine that we have for the Resident Evil games and this new kind of direction for the Resident Evil games, and then for the fans of the old series, we're going to keep remaking every Resident Evil game.
Just keep making them.
Well, I wonder.
Of course, you can stop with 4.
Oh yeah.
True.
Even 4 is still very, very playable.
That's what I mean. They can remake 4, but stop with 4.
Well, yeah, they can go to a lot of the side ones. They can go to Code Veronica. They could go to.
Oh, Matt, you could finally play it.
Yeah, they could go to
be able to see it.
They could. Well, I guess they're technically already doing that with the multiplayer component. What was that? Those called? Oh God.
The Mercenaries modes.
No, but there was a game that had a multiplayer component to it too.
Like Outbreak.
Outbreak 1 and 2. Yeah. So, but I guess that's what the multiplayer mode for Resident Evil 3 is supposed to be. But I'm excited to try that. I thought, especially when I was getting 3 regardless, but the icing on the cake was like, hey, you're getting the multiplayer part of it as well. I was like, oh, that's going to be really fun. Just kind of seems like something to, a nice time waster. Like, oh, I'm going to be the killer or whatever, the guy that like sends shit to try and kill the opposing players. Kind of like how Friday the 13th was kind of fun. Like every now and then I know Andy's giving me a weird face. Yes, it is not the most.
It was fun up until that last game.
But if I guarantee you, if we had 8 friends that were pretty good friends and one person was Jason, that game would be fun. So I mean, then again, that's not saying much for multiplayer games.
I still don't
like
think
saying
it had,
you can
like, even with that, I don't think there was a lot of longevity. Really?
No. Again, it's not longevity, but this type of game might have. Whereas you can be like I'm going to send these type of enemies your way. I haven't seen a lot of gameplay of it. Now that it's coming with Resident Evil 3, I probably should.
I don't think they've released a lot of information about it, or like what kind of longevity it will have. Like if there's upgrades, if it's kind of like gated, if there's different difficulties, or how that all works. I don't think they've really said much about anything like that.
Oh, I thought they released some gameplay of it because
Maybe
there's going to be one player. One player out of 5 is going to be like basically the he's going to be he's going to be in the operating room kind of thing, and he's going to be screwing people with, what's it called, like traps and stuff like that. And I'm guessing the more you hit people, the more you damage people, the more points you get. Therefore, you can set out this trap or
I'm wondering if maybe they didn't. The reason they might not be worried about longevity, and that's why it's being packed with RE3, whereas originally it was going to be like its own game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't have touched it if it
was
was its own game.
Umbrella Corps didn't really have too much legs, so I played that at PAX before it came out.
Oh, Umbrella Corps?
Yeah.
Didn't it feel like you were like floating? Like you were moving so fast
it was
in that
not
game.
good.
It just felt ridiculously
not good.
goofy. I would love for them to make a Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City 2, except fix it.
What was wrong with it?
It's just people. I mean, first of all, the enemies were like friggin' bullet sponges. You'd have a human in a t-shirt coming at you, and it would take like 60 bullets to take them down.
Sounds
Like
about
the
right.
Division.
So, yeah, except the worst thing is they didn't. You know how some enemies, they kind of look like, this is going to take a lot of bullets. These guys, like, they're the type of enemies you see in, like, Uncharted, where you, like, put one bullet in their chest and it's like, up, they're down. Nope, this is like, reload, still nothing. Plus, like, the cutscenes, you could tell it was on, like, a budget. It was a very budgeted game, but it was still, I thought each character had a little bit of, like, a different class. One of them was more of a tank, like a typical, like, zombie, or, like, team-oriented co-op game.
Just checking all the boxes.
Yeah, so I still thought it was fun because of the nostalgia factor. You walk through, like, the Resident Evil 1 like laboratory, and then you got out and saw Mr. X, and then the third one you saw Resident Evil Nemesis, all in like one game, so it was kind of neat.
That's cool.
It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't well received, but I don't know, I just kind of enjoyed it. But yeah, it kind of felt like a Mercenaries mode, except like with a story to it. So, but yeah, so yay horror games.